These are properties that are abandoned, and there are shows on like HGTV or whatever about, oh, I bought this fix and flip, come check it out. And then miraculously, within the time allotted for them to film the show, right, they figured out how to rehab the whole property. The whole litany of things that we have to deal with is just totally forgotten about.
You're listening to Real Returns, where we learn how real leaders are finding real purpose through the work they do. Join your hosts, Andrew and Dan, as they interview leaders about how their businesses are creating meaningful change for individuals and communities around the world.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Real Returns podcast. I am your host, Andrew Reichert. I'm super excited for today's episode. I've got a fellow YPO member with me. Adam Taki and I originally got connected because we were talking about AI use cases for real estate. And Adam has been just such a helpful influence in my life, talking about not just that, but really thinking about all things business and family. Last time we were in New York, I had a great walk and chat with him, and he's really just an incredible person. So Adam, thank you so much for being on the show.
I really appreciate those kind words, Andrew, and thank you for inviting me. Pleasure to be here.
I'm really excited to have you on. So what are you working on these days? What challenges are you running into?
Oh, the number of challenges seem never ending. It's like every day there's something else. But something exciting I'm doing now is spinning up a plumbing company. We have something like 400 properties that we own and manage, and 1/3 of our maintenance calls are related to water damage, or especially this winter, right, when it's so frigid cold out, you figure out really quickly which of your pipes were not insulated properly. And on the other side of the business, as we get the units, as we get the properties, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit, when we get them, the condition that they're in is really terrible. So we end up having to replumb almost everything anyway. So the idea really was to bring on a master plumber. Well, actually, the initial idea was to go and buy a plumbing company in my region, which, by the way, is like, no, everybody and their mother has signed up for that list. And everybody wants to buy this, and what I learned was that private equity and venture is like, they're like going further and further down the stack. So you see deals where people make $300,000 a year, and they're asking like 7 times like owner, provided financials. It's crazy. It's a crazy. I don't know if you've looked at trades.
We have. I was actually going to say that was one of the things we talked about last time we were together, is that vertical integration is really key to our business, and I think it's also key to your business. And today we do all of the property management and the maintenance in house, and I would love to buy an HVAC company, a plumbing company, an electrician company. Like, those are the 3 main trades that we vendor a ton of money out for. I mean, we probably spend millions of dollars a year on each of those. And if we had those vendors in house, I think we could save some money. So I love where your head's at. And that was where I went, like, why not just buy a plumbing company? So it sounds like, is it in your markets it's hard, or just in general it's hard?
We saw some deals, but I think that that space, it's not for strategics like us anymore. It's like private equity wants to roll these up, and then you buy them at a 4 times multiple, and you buy another one at a 4 times multiple. You buy the 10th one at a 4 times multiple. Well, now you can resell at a 7 times multiple the same thing that you just wrapped together, regardless of any kind of synergy effect, right? You just have this arbitrage on the multiple based on the size of the earnings stream. And people figured it out. And HVAC is HVAC, plumbing, electrical, right? This is like the anti-AI trade, right, to some extent. And I think a lot of people are super excited about investing in the space. My timing maybe was just bad. Like maybe I should have been looking at this 5 or 7 years ago, rather than doing because we have a construction division, rather than doing construction. But here we are.
Yeah. So we were chatting a little bit, and I was saying, I think you may be the first guest that has come on the show that does tax-lien investing. And I would bet that a lot of our listeners don't even know what that is. So can you just take a step back and talk a little bit about your business model?
Yeah. So the closest thing that probably touches most people is like buying a bond or a mortgage, right? If you're, say, a note holder, you're a bank, right? You're lending money on a long-term basis, and you're borrowing short. And in theory, if you're borrowing short, you're paying less for that money than the longer-term loan, because you're taking more. There's duration risk, so you should be compensated for that, and that's in effect the bank's model, right? So, except for in 2022, I suppose, in 2023, and as long as the yield curve is inverted. But putting that aside, the model is like a bank to some extent, except it focuses on delinquencies. So if somebody fails to make their property tax or utility payment, we end up filling the gap. And depending on your taxing jurisdiction, that can mean a few different things. For the most of the time, we're buying these instruments directly from a municipal taxing jurisdiction or a county taxing jurisdiction. And 99% of the time, similar to a mortgage or to a bond, these redeem. We make a little bit of interest. That interest hopefully is more than what we paid in interest expense. And then we go about our day. 1% of the time, or maybe less, there is no owner. Owner disappears. Maybe it's a contractor who bought a property and thought they'd fix it up and flip it, and then realized, wait a minute, the foundation is bad. We gotta, or whatever it might be, and the property gets abandoned. And in those cases, we get the property. We do our best to fix it up for a long-term hold. We rent it out. We finance it, and that's the model. There's a lot probably in there.
And what about geographic focus? Where are you geographically focused?
I live in New York, but most of our assets are in New Jersey. However, we tend to go where the markets are amenable to the strat. Like there are some places like Pennsylvania, for example, does not have tax-lien law in the same way that a lot of other states do. Philadelphia, you can buy tax liens in the city of Philadelphia. You cannot in a lot of other parts of the state. They'll actually sell deeds. And so you could go to the courthouse steps and buy a property, but you can't necessarily have a lien against the property. Because the lien instrument itself, depending on the jurisdiction, as I mentioned, it's like a bond, but it's collateralized by the property, and you have a redemption window, and the property owner can pay it off anytime inside of the or the mortgage. Which maybe this is a point to note, is that because we're buying it from municipal or county government, we're actually taking their place in the pecking order. Mm-hmm. So the only thing ahead of this particular kind of instrument is like an IRS income tax lien or something like that. So a bank will pay us off, which when I first started, we first started doing this, was like, all of the servicers were the ones sending us the notices.
What's the asset class that you're in? Is it single family, multifamily, office?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all of them.
all of it. But most of it is, you just think like, who doesn't pay, right? It's largely, it's going to be that contractor that walks away from the property. It's going to be the mixed use property where you've got like retail on the bottom and 2 apartments up top, right? Where maybe the owner lived in one of the units up top, rented one of them out, and then had a store on the first floor, but then the store went inside out, the business went inside out, whatever. There's somebody dies and then the kids inherit the property, but they don't want to pay the bills.
Yeah. How about Trump's notion on single family residential not being owned by larger institutions? Is that impacting you at all? Have you thought about that?
I think I have. I don't have an answer. I think there's a proposal that he drafted and has sent in. I'm not sure if what this is going to turn into is like invitation homes, like, I don't know, 80, 90,000 SFRs in the, major major player in the space. Does that mean that that Invitation Homes can still go out and buy properties if they put 100 in each LLC or something of the sort? Like if there's a sort of corporate structured way to get around institutional buyers buying?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I guess we'll have to see where the rubber meets the road on that. I presume they're not saying that for multifamily, right? I mean, they're not saying you can't own apartment buildings.
No, I mean, could you imagine? I think that's who owns all of the apartment buildings. There's not a whole lot of mom and pop. Well, honestly, that's mainly who we buy from. Interestingly enough, is the mom and pop owner that built the place or owned it for 30, 40 years. But we typically sell upstream to institutional, and as you know, most multifamilies owned by institutional. But I think about that a little bit, thinking about your business. One of the things we like to talk about on the show is impact, and what's the positive impact that our businesses are having on the world around us. And I think oftentimes people look at it as a black or white thing, and there's often more like a spectrum where the single family residential space, you could look at it as good or bad, which is kind of that black and white mentality of, oh, institutions are all bad, right? They're going to come in and buy up all the single family, and average Joe investor or homeowner is going to be the loser. Or you could take the opposite approach, which is that they're all good, which is to say, wow, like this is capital into neighborhoods that need it, and into single family residential homes that need it. And I think about that a lot with your business, and just knowing what I know about you, I know that you think about the impact that your business is having. So can you just share a little bit about how you think of that from a tax lien standpoint?
Yeah. So it's really the simplest way for me to think about it is that it's an extension of credit to somebody who otherwise can't get it. And generally, the rates on that credit, it's not that expensive. I mean, credit cards, which is a thing that Trump recently had brought up and then somehow disappeared in the State of the Union. I don't know if you caught that, but there was this idea, right? Proposal. Oh, hey, let's like move APRs to cap them at 10% or whatever. And then I think Trump and the White House ended up meeting with. Anyway, they met with all the banks and then realized, oh, wait a minute, now we'll kill like a huge chunk of, like, there'll be no access to credit for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's like, all right, let's not do that.
Basically. But it's kind of like that, though. The rates of return are more are less than one might. If you like look up tax lien investing, people will be like, oh wow, like you can get 18% on every dollar you're deploying. The reality is that you can't do that really at all. And it depends on the state you're investing in, but some states will have like caps on the interest you can earn, this kind of thing. So the cost to the homeowner is actually not so substantial as I guess what I'm saying. In some cases it can snowball depending on the property and whatever. But generally speaking, it's this extension of credit to people that otherwise wouldn't have it. Part one. Part two is that it enriches the coffers of the jurisdictions in which we're investing. And, somebody might say, oh, you're that evil capitalist, right? That's like going to take away my property. On the flip side, if you have a fire, or if, you've got kids and you want them to go to school, if you want the police to show up when something bad happens, like those things have to get paid for somehow. And when property owners fail to make their payment, those are the things, right? Those are the exact services that are otherwise not paid. So I don't know, 100 years ago, they figured out, oh, we need to figure out how to collect some money to fill the gaps in the U.S. anyway. I understand actually that in ancient Rome they had what they call tax farming practice, though that's quite different. I think there was more run by like hooligans, and you didn't pay your bill, so we're gonna knock down your door kind of.
Yeah, like the loan shark. I get this picture of like the mafia coming after me, which is funny because my ancestors are Italian, and I always think of that. I actually have cousins still in Rome and stuff, and there's definitely a sentiment that there's a certain picture of a person, right? That's like out to just take advantage of other people. And I think that's where that like good versus bad, polarity can kind of come in. And I think it is a little bit of a just a false dichotomy. I think that there's good that can be done in any and every industry, and there's bad that can be done in any industry. I'm sure there's bad actors in this industry as well, and I'm really grateful for the good hard work that you're doing. I know that there's obviously positive impact by extending credit to property owners that might not otherwise be able to get it. But one of the things we were just talking about during the break there is there's also improving the actual neighborhood, which is something we care about a lot. Our mission is improving lives through real estate. We come in, we buy these assets from folks who have otherwise neglected them. We fix them up. And I think in many cases you're doing that as well. Is that true?
Yeah, that's right. As I mentioned before, I mean, in many cases, these are properties that are abandoned, and there are shows on like HGTV or whatever about, oh, I bought this fix and flip, come check it out, and then miraculously, within the time allotted for them to film the show, right, they figured out how to rehab the whole property, and it seems like the nightmares over this septic was actually undersized when it was installed, and the well actually is no good and the water is brackish. The whole litany of things that we have to deal with is just totally forgotten about. And the condition of some of these properties is atrocious. So when we get them, as I mentioned, we fix them up, but fixing them up is no small feat. That's where most of my headcount is today. We have 60 people in the business, and I'd say 50 people are construction and
swinging hammers.
Yeah, swinging hammers and stuff. So
yeah, so same with our business. We have 110 people, I think, and 70 to 80 of them are in the field. Property managers, maintenance people, leasing agents, all that stuff. I mean, it takes a lot of humans to make real estate work. And you and I are both AI geeks and like to play with tools, but the reality is real estate is just a human centric business. I mean, it really requires a lot of humans to make it happen. One of the things I really like to talk about is just what's happening in current events in the industry. I saw this Supreme Court ruling come across just this week that might impact tax-lien law. And I was thinking about you, and I also heard that back in 2022, there was a sort of a Supreme Court ruling that really impacted your business. So can you just talk about what happened then and what's happening now?
Yeah. So the case I think you're mentioning, I don't know a ton about, but in say 22-23, there was a case that like rocked the tax lien world, and that was Tyler v. Hennepin. And in Tyler v. Hennepin, there was an elderly lady who owned a condo in Hennepin County, Minnesota, lives in Minneapolis. And I think she owed something like $15,000 in taxes. And then the county sold the property at auction and sold it for 40. So the 25 difference was taken in effect by the county, and this particular case went all the way up to Supreme Court. Supreme Court ruled this is unconstitutional, and this is a taking. And so after that ruling, in a number of New Jersey is our largest exposure geographically, and in New Jersey, the appellate division, published an opinion. Yeah, we're affirming the Supreme Court's ruling in this particular case. And then it kind of turned into, well, what does that mean? And it took, I don't know, call it a year or something like that, year and a half, for the legislative bodies to actually draft new laws that today require the foreclosing entity or party, the plaintiff, to allow for the property owner or perhaps even the mortgage note holder to demand an auction.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and then I think the money just goes to the excess goes to the property owner.
Interesting. And do you expect that to affect your business kind of moving forward?
It's as easy as sending an email to opt into the program. I had a few sort of thoughts on how this might play out, but kind of hard to tell until we've seen a few years. That said, I've seen that in certain areas, there's way more interest in opting into that program than there had been previously. So it does change the model a little bit, but
I know you think about risk a lot, and so in a business where Supreme Court rulings can impact your business so much, I'm just really curious. And one of the things that I'm also curious about is, how did you even get into this business? And I've heard you say that you like niches where perceived risk is greatest, but is it arithmetic risk is lowest? Like, is that how you think about the business that you're in? And do you still think that'll be the case with some of the tax lien changes with the Supreme Court?
Oh, in terms of the tax law, I think at the end of the day, the thing that we're investing in looks and smells more like a bond than it ever has. It used to be this kind of option, and now it's more of a bond. I think that there's less risks today than there was before, because if you wound up with that property that was a total wreck, and the owner just said, "Oh, I want to sell it," I guess we could have been in the position of owning the same thing and tried to sell it, but maybe we wouldn't be so good at selling it, or maybe we would, sink money into it, thinking we could fix it. And then maybe we were wrong. Maybe that's a kind of asset that, there are plenty of cases in New Jersey where there's just undocumented lead containers underground. So like a gas station from the 1940s, right, that just wasn't papered properly, or the closing of the tank wasn't papered properly, or those are the things that, like, I don't want that.
Nobody wants that.
But at an auction, somebody might just pick it up or know something more, or like have an edge that I don't, and that's okay. But yeah, I think there's less risk, but there's probably similarly less upside.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's great. I was really curious about that. Well, this has been fascinating. That's really all the time that we have. I learned a ton about a little niche that I really didn't know much about. So thanks for being on the show, Adam Taki, founder and president at Actlien Holding. As you heard, he has over 300 rental properties, and also published author of Zenovation, which I would encourage all of our listeners to pick up. And also finds ways to give back. I know you're chair of the board at the Spire Legacy School in New York City there. That's really awesome. Hey, if folks want to get in touch with you, Adam, what's the best way to do so?
You can find me on LinkedIn. My handle's just my name, Adam Taki.
Great. Well, encouraging all of our guests, if you want to learn more about this, you can reach out to Adam. Thanks so much for being on the show, Adam. Thank you to our listeners for listening in. This has been a great episode. Always love having a fellow YPO member on the show. For our listeners, if you haven't already followed, we have a newsletter. You can learn more about our show at burgo.com/realreturns. Thank you all so much for listening in, and we'll catch you all next time.
Thank you so much, Andrew.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks for listening to Real Returns. Tune in every other Wednesday for more conversations around investing, entrepreneurship, and how business can instill a sense of purpose.